Welcome back. I'm so glad you could join me. Today we're reading chapters 9 and 10, finishing up Popeye in Deep Sea Danger. I'm so glad you could join me. Chapter 9, where are you? There we are. A Deep Sea Battle. As Sweet Pea saw Grumbler starting toward him, he shouted, "Dr. Stare, I command you to command Popeye to stop Grumbler." Grumbler's hand gripped the small child, hoisting him aloft. "Popeye," commanded Stare, "you must save Sweet Pea." "Belay that child," shouted Popeye as he spun Grumbler around. The burly ringmaster let Sweet Pea drop to the deck on all fours. Then he grabbed a heavy metal wrench and swung viciously at Popeye. "Ha ha ha!" With a laugh, Popeye ducked and jabbed hard. His huge fist sent Grumbler bouncing off the sub's walls like a ricocheting pinball. "Dr. Stare, obey me," Sweet Pea commanded sternly. "Release everyone who's under your spell." The hypnotist nodded meekly. Then, one by one, he freed Popeye, Olive Oil, Wimpy, and Professor Find'em from his hypnotic command. But before they could celebrate their liberation, the whole sub shuddered. "Ooh, something hit us," cried Olive. "Look," groaned Grumbler, pointing to a flashing red light on the control panel. "Our rudder's been smashed." Immediately, Popeye realized that unless the rudder was quickly fixed, the sub could not rise. They would run out of air while underwater. Popeye swung open a locker and donned scuba gear. "I'm going out through the torpedo tube." "But you're not a torpedo," Olive protested. "Aye, my honey pie, but if I can get outside, I can fix the rudder." Then he looked at Grumbler and Dr. Stare. "If you landlubbers try anything while I'm out, you'll wish I was a torpedo." Popeye shot out of the sub's torpedo tube. He flippered toward the rudder and began to repair the damage. He was concentrating on the delicate work when something suddenly hit him. He spun head over heels away from the sub. As he looked back, he saw the sea monster circling to attack him again. A wild battle raged underwater. As the monster rammed Popeye with its head, snapped at him with its dangerous jaws, and lashed at him with its whip-like tail, spinning, twisting, and parrying. Popeye tried to fight back, but his strength was being sapped. As he defended himself, he was losing the power to attack. If only he had a can of spinach. This time, Popeye could not escape the monster's lashing tail. The sailor went flying out of the water, up into the air, and right through the gaping hole in the schooner's galley. "Well, blow me down," he gasped, sprawled on the galley deck. "That critter is its own worst enemy. He sent me to just the right place." Saying that, Popeye grabbed a can of spinach, tore it open, and shook its green, strength-giving contents into his mouth. Taking no chances, Popeye gobbled down the spinach from a second can. Then he adjusted his face mask and dived back into the sea. Popeye's flippers churned powerfully as he headed for the sea monster. He could see the gigantic creature swish its tail as it gathered speed for its oncoming charge. Now to teach that oversized lizard some respect, thought Popeye. The huge reptile lunged for Popeye, but with a glancing blow of his open palm, the sailor turned aside the monster's head. Then Popeye grabbed the beast's tail and began to swing hard. The great creature, buoyed by the supporting seawater, suddenly found itself spinning dizzily in a wide circle. "Now shove off," thought Popeye as he let go. Spinning away headfirst underwater, the sea monster disappeared from sight. Relaxing a bit, Popeye once again started to repair the sub's rudder. That task finished, Popeye crawled out of the airlock back into the now rising sub. Grumbler saw his chance. He grabbed the spear-like boat hook from its rack and turned to attack Popeye, who now sat on the deck, removing his scuba gear. His back was toward the charging Grumbler. Wimpy yanked out a large, flat, raw hamburger patty from the emergency bag he always carried. With a surprisingly swift move, he flung the patty at Grumbler. It landed on the cowardly villain's face, covering both his eyes. The boat hook whizzed by Popeye, barely missing him. "Oh, what a waste of good meat," sighed Wimpy. "I won't let it go to waste," Popeye responded. "I heard that raw meat is good for a black eye." His right hand shot forward, catching Grumbler's face as he tugged aside the meat. With a yowl of pain, the ex-circus man stumbled backward. One look at his left eye showed its obvious need for the raw meat patty. Soon, they all stood on board the schooner. Stare explained how he and Grumbler had planned to use tranquilizer-tipped darts to capture the sea monster. "It would have died very quickly in captivity," Findem stated. "You'd have wiped out a species for nothing. I know that, and I also know why the creature hasn't been seen for a century." Chapter 10. A Friendly Monster. Findem was ready to lead them all to the creature's lair, if Stare and Grumbler agreed never to reveal its location to anyone. "How can you trust them?" Popeye asked. "I can trust them," said Findem. "I can trust them because I'll make them a very profitable offer." Professor Findem told the two ex-circus hands that if they swore to keep the monster's home grounds secret, he would let them take exclusive photos of the creature. "Wow!" "Oh," gasped Grumbler. "Those pictures would be worth a fortune." "And taking pictures," Dr. Stare added quickly, "is much cheaper than keeping and providing food for the monster ourselves. Especially," noted Wimpy, "since it fancies only the finest sirloin hamburger meat." To pledge their lifelong secrecy, Dr. Stare and Grumbler offered to swear an oath on something that was very special to them, an old circus program. "I promise," they both intoned, "never to reveal where the sea monster lives."
"I promise."
Hearing that, Findem
Never
told
to
Popeye
reveal
to
where
sail
the sea
toward the
monster
cabin
lives.
in the bay, for he was certain that was the sea monster's lair, the place it stayed close to when not out searching for food at sea. "We'll keep our sub on the surface," offered Grumbler, "and head in with you." "No," exclaimed Findem, stopping Grumbler before he could board the sub. "Turning on your sub's propeller could frighten off the sea monster or cause him to attack us. Everyone looked toward the professor for an explanation.
Don't look at me like that.
2 attacks on the sub, Findham told them, confirmed my theory, especially after we saw the sea monster rub its cheek against our canvas sail. Avast, I'm just an old sailor, sighed Popeye. Can you make it clear to me, Professor? And me, too, piped up Sweet Pea. I need your theory for my homework report. Professor Findham explained why he thought the sea monster had not been seen in the last 100 years. It was then that the sailing ships began to be replaced by propeller-driven ships. Those noisy propellers, he said, probably either angered or frightened off the surviving monsters, who took refuge in places like Cape Gloom. In the days of sailing ships, the professor continued, the great creatures were seen now and then because of a peculiar habit they seem to have. As this one just showed us, they enjoyed rubbing their cheeks against the scratchy canvas sails. The misunderstood monsters frightened the old-time sailors. I can see why, said Olive Oil. Do you think there are any more of the critters left? Asked Popeye. The professor smiled. It's hard to say. This one might be the world's last, and that makes it very valuable. There's much to learn from it. But the best way to study it is to approach it peacefully in its lair. Shiver me timbers, that's what we'll do, said Popeye. Half an hour later, the schooner floated close to the cavern. Will we have to wait a long time? Sweet Pea asked. Not long, Popeye answered, if me scheme works. He held out his hand toward Wimpy. Give me a you-know-what, he said. We'll see if the monster's at home. Reluctantly, Wimpy placed a big, raw hamburger patty in Popeye's open palm. Popeye spun around and hurled the patty like a discus. It landed with a big splash just outside the cavern entrance. Then they watched and waited. There! Cried Sweet Pea. Out of the cavern, the sea monster swam majestically, its long neck and head held high. Grumbler worked the movie camera and Dr. Stare snapped away with his still camera. They saw the monster poke its head into the water and come up with a hamburger patty in its tooth-lined mouth. One swallow, and the meat was gone. Then, as if to prove that Professor Findham's theory was accurate, the sea monster swam up to the schooner. Before Olive Oil could scream, Popeye's hand covered her mouth. He patted her shoulder, reassuringly. The monster rubbed its cheek happily against the scratchy sail. Findham busily used an array of scientific instruments that told him dozens of vital facts for later analysis. The monster's loud squawk echoed across the bay, and then the animal slipped back into the water and vanished from sight. If only we could capture that creature, sighed Grumbler. Scuttle that talk, Popeye commanded. You swore to keep the monster's home a secret. One look at Popeye's determined face and bulging muscles seemed to convince the two men that it might be wise to keep their word. The pictures, stammered Dr. Stare. Should be profitable enough. I got fantastic shots. A month later, Popeye, Olive, and Findham were watching those fantastic shots on TV. Oh dear, sighed Olive. I wonder if they'll keep their word. The film about the sea monster ended, and the TV host began to interview the two men. And just where, asked the host, did you find that creature? Sorry, replied Grumbler. We'll never reveal that. We're sworn to secrecy, added Dr. Stare. Why, exclaimed Olive, they're going to keep their word. Why shouldn't they? Popeye asked. Those films and photos are worth a fortune. And if they talk, Bindum said, smiling, they'll have to account to you. Then, he added, the voyage was of great benefit to mankind. I'm preparing my study of how this link to the prehistoric dinosaurs survived into our times. And if there are a few other such sea creatures around, they may survive into the future. Meanwhile, Wimpy's new business was more than surviving. It was thriving. He was selling official monster burgers from the stand on which was displayed a photo of Wimpy looking over at discoverers railing at the giant creature. Sweet Pea, who was helping Wimpy at the busy stand, was happy too. His homework paper on legendary creatures had earned him an A. Sweet Pea's teacher had told him that she was very pleased with the way he had noted how the relic from the distant age of dinosaurs had survived to enjoy one of the favorite foods of the space age, hamburgers. That was cute. I'm so glad you could join me for this little story. I hope you'll join me next time.